So I mentioned earlier the dread that I felt when I would have to go back to school every fall. And again, it's not that I didn't like school, but I didn't like transitions. And I also grieved the loss of summer's freedom. It's a freedom that I didn't recognize as a privilege. And as a young person, I didn't understand the relationship between freedom and responsibility. I didn't know that different people have them in different measure. I didn't recognize that some people can choose to ignore responsibility as they demand freedom, and others have to fight for every bit of freedom while carrying an unequal share of responsibility. Our reading today is about the balance of freedom and responsibility as an aspiration of our 7 principles. The book with purpose and principle describes the way that the principles were written, adopted, and crafted to model the balance between individualism, the individualism of the first principle, and the interdependence of the 7th, our knowing that we're all interconnected. That linchpin, this is a repeat for some of you, but it bears repeating. The linchpin holding that that independence and that interdependence is that free and responsible search for truth and meaning, named in our 4th principle. The freedom part is big. It's a big draw for us in UU congregations. As Unitarian Universalists, we idealize individualism and the right for every person to claim for themselves what they believe. As a child, I felt a deep desire to believe what I was told that I was supposed to believe in my Catholic church, and I really tried. When I finally gave up trying to believe what I simply did not, that Jesus was the only way to salvation, for instance, or that God was a father that demanded I worship him, or that only Catholics would go to heaven, when I gave up trying to believe those things, it was still a good long while before I found Unitarian Universalism. And it felt different from the moment that I walked in. What had me at hello was the openness and the freedom. And seeing lesbian co-ministers in the pulpit was no small part of that. It took much longer after finding this church for me to understand that the openness I found here and the way that we cherish freedom of thought and belief isn't the same as the freedom to believe whatever you want. It's a common misunderstanding. We do affirm and promote the free and responsible search for truth and meaning, but that does not mean that you can believe whatever you want. I haven't found the fairy godparent or divine being that grants wishes and makes you believe whatever you want. If such a god or goddess exists, I would ask to believe that everything will be better and peaceful in heaven, where we all get to live happily ever after. That would be a nice belief to have. But it isn't the way it works, not here or anywhere. But in our faith, you are encouraged and affirmed to search with freedom and responsibility for the truth and the meaning that helps you understand the world, to stay engaged in living, and to cultivate relationships of liberation, purpose, and joy. The search isn't easy. And even though we say it's free, the cost is responsibility and accountability to one another. We are here together to gather resources for the search. Together we gather courage. We gain new insights. We help one another ask curious questions and challenge our assumptions. That all sounds wonderful, but really, freedom can be scary, too. As human beings, we like certainty. We crave it, and we create a false sense of it every day just to move through the world. Even free-spirited folks need to be sure of some things. On a flight last week, the person across the aisle and I, we were sitting in the very last row, and there was some weird noises on the plane that just didn't seem like they should be that way. And we were talking after we landed safely about the things that we do to overcome the terrifying uncertainty of climbing into a metal box and launching yourself into the air 30,000 feet above the ground. I tell myself, it's safer than driving, it's safer than driving, it's safer than driving. There's very little that we can really be certain of, and yet we all form beliefs about what is true, and it's easy to get stuck there, regardless of whether those beliefs lead to true or false conclusions. One of my favorite podcasts lately is Hidden Brain with Shankar Vedantam. Recently, they aired an episode titled Facts Aren't Enough, The Psychology of False Beliefs, which unpacks this idea of certainty and how we decide what is the truth. It opens with the story of a young woman who became pregnant and searched online for connection and support in her new responsibility as a parent. Her search led her to a group of moms who were opposed to vaccinating their children, and she adopted that belief without question for a time. And this story resonated with me because I remember very clearly trying to figure this out when my first child was born. I quickly realized, after reading a few things, that even if I could do all of the reading that there was on the subject, if I could read every research paper, like that's possible as a new parent, like doesn't happen. But even if I could really read thoroughly all of the perspectives on vaccinations, I still would have two different opinions that I'd have to make a decision based on. And there was no way that I could be certain that I was doing the right thing. And so I ultimately had to trust my doctor, who was telling me, you should vaccinate your kids. And so I did. So one of the conclusions of the Hidden Brain episode is that our knowledge and our beliefs are almost entirely informed and constructed on the basis of social trust. Think about it. How many decisions do you make? How many actions do you take, and how many beliefs do you hold that are truly independent or free from the influence of any other? I would venture to guess virtually none. Even the things that we take for granted as facts, like our knowing that the earth is round. What actual evidence do you personally, individually have to verify that this is 100% true? I have not been up in a space capsule to view the roundness of the earth. And I haven't sailed around the earth to know that it's round. But I've seen pictures, and I trust the knowledge that's been passed on and the scientific evidence that's been passed on. But I don't really know for a fact that the earth is round, but I trust it is. This is social trust. We need one another in our search for truth and meaning. We need one another to check our reality, to verify our perceptions, and to question our thinking. Every way we move through the world is organized around our mutually constructed social trust. Democracy, currency, ideas about gender, language, medical research, and religious beliefs are all built upon and maintained by collective social trust. And this social trust can lead us to truth or to falsehood. It can be the foundation for collective goodwill and creative mutual empowerment, or for devastation and demise and to foment hate. A tight-knit social trust can build a wall that shuts one group out or imprisons children. Or a unified social trust can build a bridge or a hospital or a school or a social movement for liberation. For better or for worse, the social contracts that we implicitly agree upon lead us to truths and also to untruths. And so we have a profound responsibility, collectively, to that shared social trust. We have a responsibility to weave the bonds of trust with justice and with love, and with a commitment to do less harm. The freedom to search for truth and meaning unbeholden to a set of beliefs that are handed to us comes with the responsibility to question and challenge and explore as widely and openly as we can. The search is done as companions on the journey, knowing our mutual impact. And there is so much at stake, my friends. The social trust is so fragile and so frayed right now. It's hard to trust ourselves and each other to discover truth and meaning. It is tempting to grasp at certainty when so much is on shaky ground, but I offer some supplies to you to carry with you on your search in your truth and meaning backpacks. There's the essential supplies on the journey that I hope we all can build together. Diverse perspectives, compassion, and humility. First, when we're searching for truth and meaning, we need to pay attention to different perspectives and listen to multiple voices, and especially for those who may be silenced. Pay attention to what is the dominant narrative and beware of the single story, which is never complete, as Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie says in her powerful TED Talk on the danger of a single story. Search for different perspectives and notice whose viewpoints are absent. It's hard to pay attention to what isn't there, but look for it. One of the things I appreciate the most about Unitarian Universalism is the fact that we draw from many diverse sources. The 7 principles get a lot of play in our movement, but our sources are the instruments of the free and responsible search. Our sources include stories from the Christian and Hebrew scriptures, stories of prophetic people acting for justice, the texts of all the world religions. They include transcendentalism, humanism, science, and our own reason and experience, as well as wisdom from the natural world. These sources, broad and pluralistic, inform our search. They are the resources we pack in our bags as we set out on the journey of growth and learning, and these sources require relationship, connection, diverse perspectives and experiences to inform us, to check and balance our freedom, our biases, and our privileges, such as they are. With the sources, we can cross-reference our certainties. The second thing we carry with us in our search for truth and meaning is the priority to first do no harm, as caregivers promise. Our freedom has to be held in balance with our responsibility to each other and our accountability to the well-being of the whole. Again, this is where we say, no, we really are not the place where you can believe whatever you want. Because there are some beliefs which translate into actions that are harmful. We are to speak out against harmful, hateful words that embolden racism and oppression, for example. If my search for truth has led me to beliefs that cause you harm, that's not responsible. If your belief is that I am less important, less valuable, and that my needs matter less than yours, that's not responsible, and it's not free. It's a harmful belief. Cultivating relationships across different perspectives and experiences help us to become aware of the impacts of our beliefs, words, and actions. I think of this as having accountability partners. People I can check in with about the words that I say and the actions I take, not to tell me if I'm right or wrong or give me some sort of a ally pass, but to help me to minimize the unintended harm that I might cause with my words or actions. This is how we did move through the process of changing our bathrooms in the lower level to be gender inclusive. We listened and we talked through together what it meant and how we can do that well. With what truth and meaning might we find if we make our central goal to minimize harm and to share power and to be in generative, collective, collaborative relationship? What if we understood that we are only as free as we are responsible to the shared trust, to our collective wisdom and mutual well-being? The final tool in our backpack of truth and meaning is humility. Our drive as human beings is to understand, to know what is true, to find and hold on to certainty. It is destabilizing to not know. But we can only grow when we start to search for and embrace all that we don't know. We can only grow as much as we rely on one another to build a shared understanding of truth and meaning. The free and responsible search requires humility. It requires an ability to get comfortable being uncomfortable, as social justice advocate Brian Stevenson says. At my interim training this past week, my dear friend and colleague Julica Herman de la Fuente shared a model for building our capacity to do anti-racism and anti-oppression work. She explained there are categories of knowing on our quest for deeper understanding. And bear with me, I've got pie charts. There are things that we know that we know. The earth is round. There are things that we know that we don't know. And there are things that we don't know we don't know. This sounds a little Rumsfeldian to me, but sorry, apologies for that. But one way of approaching anti-racism and anti-oppression and really all development, otherwise known as the search for truth and meaning, is to little by little perforate the boundary between what we don't know and what we know we don't know. So if we poke holes in that boundary a little bit, sort of question ourselves, do I really know this? We must first poke holes in our certainty here and there and push a little, gently, against those boundaries to recognize more of what we don't know, to expand that and minimize that area of I don't know what I don't know. This pushing against our boundaries of what is uncomfortable in order to embrace new possibilities can only be done in relationship, in open dialogue with people who are different from us, especially those whose voices often don't get heard. And all the while, we must be thinking, who might be harmed by what I don't know? Whose perspective am I not even thinking about? How can I build relationships in ways that will allow me to learn about my impact? We are all contributors, co-builders, co-creators of the sacred trust, and in building that trust, we have to ask ourselves whose truth is part of that shared sacred trust and whose truth is not included. The free and responsible search does not mean we are free to say and do whatever we want. It means we are responsible to each other and to the whole for creating the sacred trust that is liberating, life-giving, and beautiful. So when we share a social trust that says, Columbus discovered America, it is our responsibility to say we live on stolen lands of the Peoria, Potawatomi, Miami, and Sioux. In our shared story of a false gender binary, we are accountable to those who are hurt, limited, and excluded in that binary. If my words and my search for truth is harming people whose identities have historically kept them shut out, and if my truth denies your truth, it's not responsible and it's not free. In our search for truth and meaning, may we be open, aware, compassionate and caring, curious and humble, so that it is truly free, or at least moving toward freedom, freedom from assumptions, from biases, from harm. In our quest for the truth, may we be responsible to the collective truths that tell the fuller story of life. In the fullness of experience and the multitude of identities and possibilities, friends, I wish you blessings on your ongoing search. May we all have what we need as we continue to learn and grow together. May it be so.